Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you.
How are you, Dr. Paul?
I'm doing well.
Back in the saddle.
Yeah, we have to straighten out the news and make sure everybody knows exactly what to believe. And we've been working on that constantly, trying to get the exact figures and to understand the pandemic. Where's the pandemic? And, you know, you've seen and we've mentioned that the more they scream pandemic, the more empty the hospitals become.
Yeah.
Well, there was probably two reasons. One, it wasn't really a pandemic. And the other is that they frightened people. You know, and they scared them away, and people who were sick wouldn't even dare go. So it was below normal.
Yeah.
So since you put those two together and hospitals were empty, and yet it didn't slow them up one bit on lockdown.
Yeah.
And that's what we want to talk about again today, because there's an interesting article here by our writer is Malcolm Kendricks from the National Health Service from Great Britain.
Yeah, a medical doctor.
Medical doctor, and he sorts these numbers out. And it's easy to get twisted. Probably, he wasn't too conspiratorial. He said probably mistakes in there, but sometimes people latch on to mistakes. But anyway, I think he explains what has happened, and we were sort of onto this all along because they were misrepresenting what was really happening. And he came up, he says, the headline on the article on this is, "The 1% Blunder, How a Simple but Fatal Math Mistake by U.S. COVID-19 Experts Caused the World to Panic and Order Lockdowns." So that, I think, is a very, very true statement, and he does support it. He dissects this out. It's not always easy to keep track of what's going on. We'll do a little bit and try to simplify it, but it's still a good article to look up. But there's another report goes along with this, so this isn't, we don't feel so lonely. This other one by somebody I've known over the years, Michael Barone, who he does an encyclopedia, I think he still does it, of all members of Congress ever. So I imagine that's still available. And the headline to this article that he wrote, "It now looking like the lockdowns may have been a huge mistake." Could they do that?
Now they tell us.
But they're admitting to it. But the one thing it seems like it hasn't happened is they haven't changed their mind on anything. Do you think they're backing off? The people understand all this.
Yeah.
That's why they're challenging the rules. But the government is not backing down very, very much at all. And I think it's going to have to take more people, standing up for their rights and saying, this is insanity. I'm going to go to church. I'm going to go to these different places. But anyway, it was overstated. But the whole issue came down on some definitions. And the one was the definition of the infection rate versus the infection fatality rate versus the case fatality rate. Yeah. And they got mixed up. And I think originally the CDC, and it might have been Fauci, reported it correctly. He said it was 0.1% of these people will die in this category. And somewhere or another report came out, it was 1%. And, they say this was 10%. Well, there's your 10%. Yeah. That's why people believe the second report that it would be 10 times worse than was originally reported. And what was reported initially was sort of less than the average, flu virus.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, the numbers are there. He points it out, and yet now, and we'll mention this a little bit later on, this whole thing may cause more harm than the virus. The lockdown, the people who, the loss in income and people getting sick from all this. So this I think is very important because it straightens it out and there's an understanding, but it should just give people ammunition to stand up for common sense. I know it was tough for people to say, well, yeah, I don't agree with them, but I can't I can't fight them and I can't do it. I can't take on the school board. I can't take on City Hall and the governors. And there's no easy way to do that. But I believe the information is on our side of this argument, and people should feel more motivated to stand up for what they believe is right, because this is just not a minor mistake. What did he call that? A huge mistake.
Yeah.
And we're suffering from it. And if we don't change it, then we're going to continue to suffer from it. But it's not going to change until the people just say, enough is enough, and just start challenging the people who want to lock us in our homes.
Yeah, you know, Dr. Kendricks' article was not an easy read because it's hard to sort of wrap your head around it. Maybe it's just me. But here are some of the definitions. Infection fatality rate is the totality of those infected by a disease. That includes the asymptomatic, those with mild symptoms. That's the big pool. But the case fatality rate are the people with serious enough symptoms, they're ill enough to go to the hospital. And that's what that means. And of course, that group would have a much higher mortality rate because it's the sicker people. So what he points out is in February, there was an article in the New England Journal of Medicine stating that COVID will be like a bad flu. The CFR at 0.1%. That means 1 in 1,000 of people who are sick will die. Well, that was a mistake. The CFR, the case fatality rate, has actually 1%. They flipped the two. It's the IFR that's 0.1%. So when you establish that you have the CFR at 0.1%, then you had a testimony before Congress in March where experts came and said that COVID would have a 1% CFR instead of 0.1%. So then they looked at it and said, okay, the New England Journal of Medicine article said 0.1 for the regular flu, and 1% for COVID. That means 10 times more people will die from COVID than from the regular flu. So we're looking at 3.2 million Americans, 70 million worldwide dying of it. That's when the panic happened. It was simply a blunder of 0.1 CFR versus 1% CFR.
But the misinformation on the data still continues.
Yeah, still continues.
Because, the infection rate, you would think, well, that's the most serious thing, infection rate. But that isn't. That's the ones who have had a proven test. And that keeps going up because we keep doing more testing.
Yeah.
But the infection rate, the case rate is the serious problem. And when they do these tests, and they find people who, you've been exposed, they call it a case, but it isn't a case.
It's not a case.
It's an infection rate, should be counted, and that, of course, lowers the percentage and makes the numbers look, not so awful. But it is, and I guess the question, I'm sure our viewers are going to question it. If I say, it's just a little mistake, people make mistakes, which I don't happen to believe. But how it started, the writer indicates, could have been a mistake.
Yeah.
But I would say if it were started as a mistake, they certainly have latched onto it, and it's still continuing. Still a lot of good could come from more information like this, because many times on this program you have put up charts to show the skyrocketing indication of people who are positive down, the deaths are down and all this, and yet nothing happens. In some places, even close to home, they're getting worse, on the lockdown. So I think this is in news in a sort of a conflicted way of saying it's good news because it's telling the truth. It's bad news that it was so distorted all along. But I think the information is getting out, and I guess we have a free enough society. We can get some of this information out. So I'm delighted that these few articles existed. So I just urge our viewers, keep looking, because if it confuses you a little bit, it's not uncommon for people to get these numbers mixed, and we keep looking back on it and make sure that we're accurate. Yeah,
and we'll link to the Hendrick article. But you mentioned Michael Barone. Let's put up that first clip. This is the article that he wrote in the New York Post. It's now looking like the lockdowns may have been a huge mistake. This was published, just a couple of days ago. And he puts out some numbers. He points out that COVID has killed about 0.05 of the population. He said, deaths are continuing to rise, but nowhere near the rate they were rising, and they're not going to rise that much more. And this is even with calling everything that moves COVID. About 0.05 of the population. He says that's very similar to the 57-58 Asian flu and the 1968 Hong Kong flu. Both right around 0.04, 0.05 of the population died from those pandemics. But previously, no lockdowns, no school closures, restaurants remained open. They even had Woodstock, remember, in '69 in the midst of the pandemic. So he's saying that looking back, basically it's not that much worse than these kind of bad flu seasons, but for this, what have we done to our society, to people? And you have, I think, your next article, you're going to talk a little bit about some of the fallout, some of the terrible things that governments have done in the name of fighting this virus.
Right, they have, and what the results have been of the lockdown. And here's a headline that is interesting because it comes from the CDC and making our point, and something we've been trying to tell people. You know, the lockdown is very dangerous. And the headline is, the CDC said there have been more suicides than deaths by the COVID-19 virus. Isn't that astounding? It's self-inflicted.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't wake up people, what are we going to have to do? Are we going to have to dance or something to get their attention? So I'll tell you, that is so sad. And this was sent to me by Bill Sardi.
Yeah.
And he is a good researcher on all of this. But no, this is most significant because it's the CDC that has said this. So the CDC has a bunch of bureaucrats, and the ones that up at the higher level must be more confused. The longer they stay there, the more confused they get.
Kidding.
Because here's somebody that did the research at CDC, so there must be some decent people there trying to do what they're getting paid for.
And it's sort of like Fauci when they asked him if you thought about the societal effects of these lockdowns you're endorsing. He said, no, I don't really think about it. You know, the inability to focus at the big picture. Okay, even if we accept what they put forth, which I would seriously question it, that maybe it saves some lives for these lockdowns. It costs so many more lives in suicides, increase in alcoholism and drug abuse, all sorts of marital strife, the economy in the toilet. You know, so it's the what if instead of. But here's something, as long as we're getting a little bit riled up, Dr. Paul, why don't we pull up this next clip and get everyone else riled up, because this is the poster child of government. San Francisco keeps city-owned gyms open while the private gyms are still barred from reopening. This is Pelosi's world. This is the world that Pelosi and people like her live in. They have their own little private gyms wherever they work because they're in government, right? They get everything for free. They're in their private gyms, they're exercising and keeping healthy. Meanwhile, they force the gyms around the country to close, around the city of San Francisco to close. They're going out of business. They're all out of business. And it's just come out that, yeah, if you're a part of the party, the inner party, well, you have no problem.
It sounds like there's still a lot of supporters of Pelosi in San Francisco. You know, there's two sets of rules, and she certainly demonstrated that. Hopefully the attention she got will end up being a negative, but it doesn't seem to really bother her politically. So it's just an example of the arrogance that they have, that they can do what they want, and the little guys can suffer. And it seems like, the worst part about it fits in to the format of helping the socialist, arguments. The rich get richer, and they get protected. Some of the big companies are still making a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
Who gets closed down? Not the gyms that are in the government building, but the private gyms, the little shops. And I'll bet there are already statistics to show how many millions of those individuals have been affected by this. And, even if you have a little shop and you have 5 people working for you, that's a little shop, that's no big deal. But I'll tell you what, that has added up to a whole lot, and that can be used politically, and yet that's a gross distortion of what's really happening, because the natural consequence of the economic system we have here is to undermine the stability of the middle class and enhance the rich, and this is just political fuel for the fire, and make things worse.
Because, of course, the rich are entwined together with the well-connected, the people that get their gyms. Dr. Paul, it reminds me of the people who were all in favor of the lockdowns. They loved it. They wanted to go on forever. And you scratch a little bit below the surface, and they were all still getting their paychecks. They were teachers. They were people who could, quote, work from home. If you're a welder, if you're a car mechanic, you can't work from home. These are the people that lost their jobs, or a waiter. You can't work from home if you're a waiter. They lost their jobs. The people that were getting their paychecks, they were sitting around their pajamas all day thinking, this could go on forever. This is wonderful. It's this callous attitude toward the blue collar workers and others who can't work from home.
Until they burn something in front of your house, like they did to the mayor's house. Oh, I think I'm going to get out of this job, move out of this place. So,
That's
but
not fair.
they wake up maybe afterwards, but they'll always believe that they're going to be in the elite group, and they will be protected. So I also have here that
And here's some good news, actually.
To admit Gates, this is, it's information. The one I have here is the one about the vaccinations in Africa.
Yeah.
This is good news that we're knowing about it, and maybe we'll do something about it. It's bad news. Again, it doesn't enhance the reputation and the moral standards of Bill Gates. But because this is coming out, and I believe the UN forced to admit Gates-funded vaccine is causing polio outbreaks in Africa. But how many people know that? I would think our viewers know this because we get messages from them all the time. And this is something that they used a live virus, and now the very disease that Gates was going to stomp out, he's made it worse. Millions and millions of dollars. But that makes you wonder, well, the reason why this could be backfire on him is that, guess what? More and more people are rejecting the notion, give me the vaccine, I want that vaccine. When they read this, of what he has done, and the fallacy of government manipulated vaccines, even in 76 when they did that, when they rushed things through, I think that's the last thing that they would do. So I never say that my position has to be, don't you ever take a vaccine. I would say, anytime they offer you a vaccine, understand what it is and why it's doing. And if it's the first month it's out and they're getting a lot of money for it, that you better be careful. I was thinking the other day about what really encourages all this massive manufacturing of vaccine is the liability factor. Why should they be exempt from liability? Because because they couldn't afford it. See, the liability would guide this development. It might take longer, but they don't need a regulation to say it better be safe and effective. What they have to do, they better be safe and effective, or they're going to lose their shirt. But they get exempted from this, and guess who does it? The Republicans and the Democrats. Get their exemptions.
Well, the good news part of it really is because last time we talked about this, we were saying, about 40% of the people said they're not going to take the vaccine. And now we put up the next clip, and you alluded to it here. 2/3 of Americans say they won't get the COVID-19 vaccine when it's first available, a new poll shows. And then again, why? I wonder why. Well, as you said with the polio, they're slowly finding out that these vaccines are actually causing more disease than not. And as you say, maybe later on people will think, okay, looks like it's okay, looks like it's safe, maybe I'll go ahead and get it. But people are getting a lot more skeptical about rushing in line to get these RNA vaccines pumped into their bodies.
Well, you'd wonder why the people wouldn't react to the fact that the lockdown and everything they told us was a mistake, and more people died if they hadn't had the lockdown. And then you read stories like this. Why would anybody want to line up to take one of those things?
No thanks.
But, the experts at CDC, they say it's very necessary. Yet now we've even quoted the CDC where they have to admit, when they get caught, there's at least somebody's going to come up and say that is correct. There was, on that issue, Redfield, who runs the, what is he?
CDC,
CDC. He said that he admitted we're seeing, sadly, far greater suicides now than we are deaths from COVID. We're seeing far greater deaths from drug overdose that are above excess that we had predicted from COVID.
Wow.
So it's drug addiction. But then to measure all the psychological problems going on and what's going on with the kids, I think that can last for a long time. The recovery period from this type of hysteria is slow.
Yeah.
I mean, they can lock us down in one day, And it's amazing that so many people roll over, but they're terrified. They're scared to death, and they're scared about, city officials, or say somebody says, no, we're going to open up the school and we're going to do this and we're going to have a football game, and one person gets sick, seriously ill, which is a possibility whether he's in school or out of school. Oh, see, it was that coach or that teacher. It was those libertarians that wanted to make their own choices. Then they used that. So there is a legitimate reason for them to be concerned. And the only thing that can alter that is more information. That's what we hope we can contribute to.
Yeah. Well, this next story we want to cover, I know it's near and dear to your heart. And it comes to us by way of our good friend Bob Wenzel's Target Liberty site, which everyone should go to every day. Let's put up this picture and listen to Dr. Paul start steaming when he reads this. This happened at the Nationals Stadium, Major League Baseball. An empty stadium, as you can see.
Looks very dangerous. I'm staying away from there. I don't want to catch a cold. No, this one really got to me. It seems like when they interrupt on the sports, it annoys me more than others because I keep thinking sports is an alternative to fighting, and you can, let out some steam and all this sort of thing. But when they close down sports and when they don't allow the kids to go out, and the high schoolers haven't been able to get into it, the more independent private schools are, but they close down a whole season, and it's all for political reason. If you don't do it, you're an evil monster. No, this one really got to me because this is Mike Rizzo, who's the general manager for the
Washington
National. And here he is in the stadium. You saw the picture. Nobody there. And he's on the third deck. But I guess because he's the general manager, he's like on the team. He's an official on the team. And he's allowed to be in the dugout and around there. But he's on the third tier.
In his own private suite.
His private suite. Nobody else in the stadium. And he gets thrown out of the game.
Yeah, thrown out of the game because he didn't have a mask on. Alone in a stadium.
Folks, if we can't get more people joining us after hearing these kind of stories, I don't know what's going to do it. But this is approaching insanity.
Literal insanity. Literal insanity.
It makes no sense whatsoever.
Well, I got a couple more short things before we close. The big thing now is about colleges. And our friend Greg Morin, who we know very well, he's been very active in Georgia to get colleges open. But all around we're hearing this panic about universities. Oh my gosh, these kids are testing positive. They're testing positive. We got to shut everything down. And Adam Dick, we talked about it yesterday from RPI, has written about how colleges have become prisons. You can't even throw a frisbee in the quad. All forbidden. All forbidden. These kids are so depressed, are having a horrible time. Oh, they must be dropping like flies. Well, here's something that I came across on Twitter. This is a chart of all the positive cases for the big universities. That's the middle number. Lots of them. 11,018 cases discovered in college campuses. That's what they're shutting everything down for. But then look at the next column. Reported hospitalizations, zero. This tells the story like nothing else of what's going on in the universities today.
There was an absurdity that happened with a member of my family. My oldest son, Ronnie, is a real good swimmer. And we have a rec center. You can go there and swim. And, of course, it's owned by the city. He's been going in, and you have to wear your mask.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have a mask. I don't know how belligerent a son can be. So he carries his towel. And he gets in. So he gets in, and he swims. And he was a, full scholarship at University of Texas. He's a really good swimmer and keeps in good shape. So he uses the kickboard. So he uses that, and the kickboard is about 30 minutes or so. Then he gets out, and he has to carry the kickboard out to check out. And they immediately grab it. Now, here he is in the water with all the chlorine. They immediately grab it to clean it off.
Oh, jeez.
He thinks that's pretty absurd.
Well, I'm pretty annoyed at the rec center, too, because of the whole ridiculous masking. You got to walk 5 feet with a mask, and then you can take it off. And
then go swimming.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's absurd. Speaking of masks, I do have a good news story before I finally close. And we went to the local grocery store yesterday with my daughter. And, of course, we never wear masks in the store. They have now taken away the two sections where there's someone waiting in front of the door to hand you a mask. Those are gone, completely gone. They still have a little sign up, but they took down the big sign. So we're walking down the aisle, my daughter and I, without our masks. And a lady looks up and sees us. She rips her mask off and said, "I'm with you. I just don't want anyone to yell at me." And took it all the way completely off. So that is the mentality of people. They hate it. They don't want to wear it, but they're afraid. Nobody likes to be yelled at, and singled out.
That's once this breaks out, we're going to see a tremendous boost in people who support us. Because I think deep down in their heart, even the ones who accept it as a precaution, we should do it and we should be careful, I don't think they endorse everything that's being done, because it makes no sense. How could anybody endorse this idea of somebody in the third tier in a baseball diamond and kick him out because he didn't have a mask on? I keep thinking that they're good stories to tell, because it reinforces this whole idea that the whole thing is a fraud, it's a hoax. And it fits the story. I think earlier on we talked a little bit about a hoax. Not that the virus doesn't exist, but the hoax is all the lockdown. And even then, we didn't have, it just seemed fishy and they were overreacting. But now today we reveal this article that shows it is truly a hoax. It was way out of proportion. It's time to turn it off. It's time to get the regulators out of our lives and leave us alone.
Well, here's a couple of quickies. Let's do the next clip really quick. This caught my attention. It's pretty hilarious. Look at this headline. Woman who passed away 6 months ago gets a letter saying she is COVID-19 positive. Clip over the next one. A Shelby County man questions what's going on in the Shelby County Health Department. His mother died 6 months ago, but the health department just sent her a letter saying she is COVID-19 positive. So there you have it. Here's the next one. Maybe we'll talk about this more later. This is from the UN. Dr. Paul, if we need 1146, the bill to get out of UN more now than ever. Here's what the UN tweeted out. The COVID-19 pandemic is demonstrating what we all know. Millennia of patriarchy has resulted in a male-dominated world with a male-dominated culture, which damages everyone. Women, men, girls, and boys. This is the UN. They're not talking about a virus here. They're talking about something completely different. World communism. Another quick one, too. Here's, unfortunately, a couple of bad things. Our own governor once again extends the state disaster declaration for COVID-19, even though deaths are disappearing in Texas. He just can't let go of that golden ring. And a little closer to home, Dr. Paul, our own Lake Jackson. If we can look at the next one, they put this out a couple of days ago. This is why they are having a mask mandate. This is why you can't go to the gym and get healthy. 5 deceased in the entire city, and they will not release information on comorbidities. What were the circumstances of those 5 who have died? Only 5 in the city. They won't tell us anything about it. And for this, they continue this ridiculous lockdown.
And you could be pretty sure they're in some type of a nursing home or some condition like that. And then when you see the statistics against that, on the positive side, how many children even ever even gotten sick from it? They might have gotten a positive test from it, but even that is very low. But children essentially don't get it, and they may end up with some immunity, which would be a benefit. But facts don't seem to matter when you have people passing out all the really important information like CNN, MSNBC. They're going to tell the people what they're supposed to believe, and boy, they're bowing down. So there's still a spark out there that we have to keep working with.
Yeah, there is. I'm all done over here. If
you're done. Well, I want to thank our viewers once again for joining us, because in many ways, even though there's some sad stuff in this, we still look at the fact that there's a lot of people out there, and we mentioned that once people feel comfortable with it, people don't want to fight with people, and they don't want to yell at people, and I really understand that. But there's a point when I think the taking off of the mask is going to become epidemic. Let's have remove the mask day and set the day and say, this is it. And we're going to, everybody together, remove their mask and at least remove the requirements, the force. Nobody has to tell anybody else what to do if they want to wear a mask, but no political function, because this is medical. It's not political. They don't have a right to do it. They don't even have the authority to do it. They're not laws, they're recommendations. And yet the people say, oh, it's in the regulation. Well, show me where it is. When did the governor sign a bill that says that he has the authority to do this? So we have to stand up to him. And it's more demanding than ever before. And there's an opening. They're really, the proof is out there now that this was not a pandemic. It was a complete distortion of the facts. And a lot of people knew about it, but now we have some pretty sound figures on it. Even if it started by a mistake, there were some people who really thought, we're going to make good use of this mistake, and that is what we have to work with right now. We have to show that it is absolutely of no value to us to allow politicians to have this much authority over our lives and our medical care. And this, I think, is transitioning right now, and soon we might be able to live a more normal life. I do want to thank everybody for tuning in to the Liberty Report, and please come back soon.